see you. There's a relationship there. You're actually going to start to know the client better. When you notice what they're awkward talking about.
And they can't analyze it and write down and think too much about it. Sometimes I think you give the intake form ahead of time, and they have time to mull it over. Oh no, that doesn't make my mother look like a nice person. I can't say that about her. Whereas if they're popping it out, if you've got a nice rapport with my mother, and you see their expression on their face, you know.
Just sort of a different perspective on that too. If you give a client, I think, something to do before they actually get to you, I think that encourages buy-in. They're being responsible for bringing something with them. They're thinking about it.
There's certainly some aspects to it, but at the end of the day, the relationships with you, not with a computer screen, not with a form they fill out while they're waiting.
Yeah, I'm just sort of a fan of giving the client that part to do before they actually get to me, so we can get into the relationship building as soon as they walk in the door without being bothered by what's your phone number, what's your date of birth.
The way we do it here, and I'm not saying this is the best solution, but it's the best we've found so far, the way we do it here, as you know, is we have an online contact form which they fill in name, phone number, email, describe the issue, and that's it. And that is stored in a data system, which becomes the basis of all future record keeping with that client. But we don't turn it into a whole big thing. It should be dead simple, easy for the client.
I would lie right on it.
Exactly. Yeah. What are the problems in your life?
Well,
describe the most intimate challenge you ever had when you were dating in your teens.
Do you think it's helpful?
I'm not going to write that one down.
No, why not? No,
Probably because you've never met Jenny
Because I don't know you.
If you had.
And I don't
That's
want
right.
you to know.
Yeah,
Exactly. What do you know about me at that stage?
that's right.
There's a
Well, because I
horrible
don't think
disempowerment
it
as
should.
well.
How about, but okay, here's something like on the intake form that when I first started work, I started working for my teacher, and I used her. She sent the intake forms and would send me the clients with the filled out intake forms. And have you ever considered suicide? And I wonder if just legally, if they say no, and they lied about that, or if they then become suicidal, if that's some sort of legal, like, actually, here's their intake form, they said no, they were not suicidal. I'm just wondering if that covers you insurance-wise at all.
Okay, that's a really nasty question.
Nuanced,
It
okay?
is a nasty question.
Yeah, I've not committed, but considered suicide. But was I serious? So I mean, I think it's a really stupid question, and I don't think
Okay, well let's
that
take it
gets
more.
anywhere. Right?
Let's think of it like this.
No, I'm wondering
Who
if it's
around
really
this
close.
table has not
Yeah,
considered suicide?
right. Me, I have.
You have.
No,
Anybody?
I have too.
Okay, so everybody has.
In
It's a
passing.
perfectly normal human condition to consider
Yes.
suicide. The moment you say you've considered suicide in BC, your doctor can literally pick up the phone. Now keep in mind, this could be a 25-year-old intern who just qualified. He can pick up the phone and say, I've got someone who I think's a suicide risk. Can you please pick them up and bring them in for compulsory certification in a psych ward? People should absolutely not say to a medical professional, because that medical professional is not making a considered choice then. He has to report it.
Yeah.
And you are then in a series of events where there is no other outcome. You're going inside, which is why half the psych wards are filled with people who should not be there. Now the reason they're filled is, well, if the doctor had even the slightest idea that they were suicidal, and they did do it, their family could come after the health authority. So it's just easier to lock them up. It's lousy policy. What it results in is most people out there, because most people in the society know, you don't tell a healthcare professional that you're thinking of suicide, because you know you're going to be thrown in a psych ward.
It's like,
So as a
do you
result,
use
they don't
drugs?
ask for help.
Do you use illicit drugs? I mean, sure, I'm going to say yes.
Are
No.
you?
And this is BC. If you don't, there's probably something wrong with you.
Well, Ontario, you better be careful. No, or the US. But, so,
It's very, very
So
difficult to
what
think
you're
like that.
suggesting, Jeannie, is that you're getting lies anyway.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine that you could get truth, because I remember when I was a kid and I was 7 and I was going to camp, I did wet the bed, but we said I didn't. Because nobody wants to admit bed wetting, right? And that my mother did that, right? So yeah, I remember that lie, and I was a little kid.
She set you up as a liar.
Yeah.
The therapist, if they're any good,
Good man.
the therapist, if they're any good, should be able to figure out from a client, is he suicidal? Is he a serious risk? If he is a serious risk, is a psychiatric ward the best solution? Or is perhaps a slightly more gentle approach to managing their well-being? It could be that the family would be very supportive of him. Could be the family's the problem. Depends though. But this is the tough thing about being a therapist. You have to make that call. And it's a very frightening one to make. We have people come to this company, we have people come to Vancouver Hypnotherapy because they know that if they go to their psychiatrist, they will end up in a psych ward. Now, they'll come in here and they'll say, I have this terrible problem, and I can't tell anyone about it, because if I tell anyone about it, I'm likely to end up in a psych ward, and that isn't an improvement for me. So this is the sharp end of being a therapist, and it sucks. In fact, it's a pity we even use the word therapist, because that is a word which is drawn from the medical profession. And in many instances, these are not actually medical problems, they're societal problems. When we're hypnotherapists, and I don't like the word therapist, but when we're
I'd like to be a
hypnotherapists,
hypnosis practitioner.
I consider myself a hypnotist. Now, I help people using hypnosis. Some people have said a better phrase is, we're using hypnosis-based therapies. I really don't know what the answer is, but as a human being, I want to help this person. I don't want to make any mistakes, because I know most of the people who come, especially here, are up against the wall. Their downside is pretty low. But fortunately, I'm very happy to say, we've done some very good things for a great many people. To this date, I'm certainly not aware of anyone who's ended up jumping off a bridge because of us, or otherwise. I don't think any of our ex-clients did. 1 or 2 may have met with a bad end, but that was certainly nothing to do with us. They were in a very bad place because they were in the drug business. But at the end of the day, one has to make a value judgment and say, okay, I think this is the right solution. In some provinces in Canada, and certainly in some in the States, if you believe they're a suicide risk and you don't tell the police, or you don't tell the authorities, then you could be culpably
And that's not true in
guilty.
BC?
I don't believe that's the case in BC. However, forgetting about the legalities, morally, that is a much higher value. And morally, you've got to do the
That's
right
right.
thing.
Depend on which group you're working with, and you really have to make a decision.
Yes.
Indigenous peoples, people who have experienced torture, who are in continuous immigration status, you can't do it. You have to do something else.
You mean you can't get the authorities involved?
No.
Absolutely right.
So
Yeah.
you have to figure it out yourself.
Exactly.
And that's
And
what
that's
I
why
asked
it's a tough
about,
job being a therapist.
are these universals, because they can't be.
No,
because
you can't.
of
There's
the
no such thing as a rule which is
Okay.
cast
I
iron.
just want
Yeah. All of this
You
comes
mean
under the heading of
authority?
guidelines.
I mean, people who cannot be reported to any
Oh.
authority because of the loss of
Right.
everything, status,
Yeah, right.
all kinds of things.
Well,
So-
it's that balance, right? Are you doing more harm than good by doing this move? And you only want to do moves that are doing somebody good.
Right.
That's right. And if what you typically do for someone is going to do this person harm, you can't do it for them.
Right.
These are really tough decisions. This is why it is not easy being a therapist. A lot of people out there think, oh, I'm going to be a hypnotherapist, I'm going to help people. But what they don't realize is that actually the moment you say that, there is one hell of a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and it's a terrible shame that alternative healthcare and alternative health systems are put in the position where they have to deal with this.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
in many instances the training isn't really there. Certainly the regulation isn't there, because the medical system wants to own all regulation, wants to own all control, wants everything, but they're actually in many instances part of the problem. There will always be alternative healthcare. Now some of it will be good and some of it will be bad. Fortunately, we have something which is far higher than the idea of regulation. We have our own moral code. Now, if you're any good, and you're honest with yourself, and you do the very best you can, chances are you're upholding the strongest moral code there is. There is also another thing, which is also quite an interesting one, which has nothing to do with morality, and that is the market. The market is a great equalizer. If people came to Vancouver Hypnotherapy saying, I want to quit cocaine, I've got to quit cocaine really quick, and I know that you've helped this person, this person, this person, and this person, I'd really like you to help me. Yeah, of course. We really don't have a problem.
Right.
If they come to just some other person who's never worked with cocaine before, chances are they're going to say, well, have you worked with cocaine before? Do you actually know what you're doing? How much do you know about cocaine? And they're saying, well, I read about it once. And do you have any people I can talk to who have had success with this? Well, not exactly. Well, at that point, the person is probably going to start looking elsewhere. So the market actually it's not a regulator, but it weeds out some of the people who don't need to be in this business. Now, of course, if you fall foul of the wrong person, it can get nasty. But the market has an interesting way of keeping those people who are any good in business, and the people who aren't do fall by the way. Over a period of time, that's what happens. I'm very happy to say we've got over 5,500 clients in this practice. That's not an accident. It's because we're good at what we do. So, difficult questions. But let's get back to knowing our client. Okay, I've put a heading here, generations. When someone comes through the door, and I bang this home to every one of our therapists, there are a series of questions we are going to ask. One is, jumping around this board a bit here now, what's going on with the parents? If you've got a client, whether it's for anxiety, nail biting, virtually anything, I will ask the therapist sometimes, what's the situation with their parents?
It doesn't matter how old the client is?
Not important. If they're 75 years old, what was their relationship with their parents? Oh, I hated my dad, he was a complete bastard, I never liked him. Was he a smoker? Yeah. Are you a smoker? Yeah. Well, that's not an accent.
So
That's
he
not
was
an accident.
my cheek chewer.
What's the situation with that parents? You've got to ask them these questions.
How did they cope with pressure?
Right, absolutely. Most bulimics are children of bulimics. It's not an absolute rule, but it's certainly often the case.
Or, if not bulimic, some other kind of food issue.
Right,
in
and some
family.
types of compulsive behavior.
Compulsive behavior.
Now, what's going on with the parents is an absolute no-brainer. Every client we need to know. Next, relationships. If a client's coming to the company and we don't know what their relationship's about, what's their relationship status, then we've got a real problem with our therapists because that is the most basic of foundation questions we absolutely need to know. Are they in a supportive and positive relationship? Are they not? Why not? Have they recently come out of a relationship? How do those relationships end? Who breaks up with whom? How old were they when they had their first relationship, their serious relationship? It doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. What's their idea of a sexual relationship, or rather, what's their idea of a successful relationship? And what is their basis for that definition? We had one guy come in here, had terrible problems with, believe it or not, erectile dysfunction. Well, what's the relationship? What's going on? Oh, I go out, I date these girls, I usually dump them after I've gone into bed. Well, isn't that a bit odd? Well, I don't know, it's what I've always done. I just want to sleep with them, I don't want a serious relationship. Well, wait a second, where are you getting this relationship foundation, or where are you getting this idea of what a successful relationship is? Well, my mum and dad don't live together. None of my sisters are old enough for a relationship. I just do that because that's what my friends do. Now, in fact, it's what his friends say they do. But his idea of a positive relationship as a 20-year-old dating 20-year-old girls is to go out, probably get them drunk enough to jump in the sack, and that's it. And in a sense, why wouldn't it be? He's got no model. He's got no idea. So what's going on with the relationship? What's their basis of forming an idea about a relationship. If they come from an abusive home, if they come from a situation where the only relationships